Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Bhagavad Paramahansa, Paramahansa, Ashtotter to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Paramahansa, Ashtotter to the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavini ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, we'll be on page 251 tonight. 251. On this 31st day of July 2019 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 5, Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness, text number 24, top of page 251. Yontak sukontaramas tatanta jyotirevayaha sayogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhuto digacchati yontak sukontaramas tatanta jyotirevayaha sayogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhuto digacchati yontak sukontaramas tatanta jyotirevayaha sayogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhuto digacchati. Yontak sukontaramas tatantar jyotirevayaha. You can take that, Shama. No, sit over here. But take the book with you, the whole thing. The book and the seat. Sorry, I had to interrupt. And the whole thing. Yeah, the whole Megillah. Where is that coming from? You don't know that word? What? Megillah. It's a Yiddish word from New York. On this side, with the men. Page 251. Page 251. Who just chanted? You finished already. Okay. Anyone else want to chant? Go ahead, Divana. No, you don't do it. Go ahead, Ace. Yontak sukontaramas tatantar jyotirevayaha sayogi brahmanirvanam brahmabhuto rigacchati. Dharmaraj, you want us to try? Yontak sukontaramas tatantar jyotirevayaha Yogi Brahmanirvanam Brahmabhuto Digacchati. Top of 251? Yeah. 251. 251. It's at the top. If he wants. I'm going to give it a shot. Do you want to try? Go ahead, Abel. Just jump in. Just jump in. We're all friends here. Give it a try. No, okay. It's okay. No problem. And you're a little hesitant till you get to... All right. That's okay. We'll just proceed. I'll read the word-by-word meanings. You just read along silently. Yaha, one who, antahak sukhaha, happy from within, antak arama, actively enjoying within, tata, as well as antak jyoti, aiming within, eva, certainly, yaha, anyone, saha, he, yogi, a mystic, brahma nirvanam, liberation in the supreme, brahma bhuta, being self-realized, adigachati, attains. Translation: one whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic. He is liberated in the supreme, and ultimately he attains the supreme. Purport: unless one is able to relish happiness from within, how can one retire from the external engagements meant for deriving superficial happiness? A liberated person enjoys happiness by factual experience. He can therefore sit silently at any place and enjoy the activities of life from within. Such a liberated person no longer desires external material happiness. This state is called Brahmabhuta, attaining which one is assured of going back to Godhead, back to home. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chukshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Shri Parampara. So this is the first of several verses that we'll hear, actually these two, that describe the state of Brahma Nirvana. Now we heard about Brahma Nirvana at the end of the second chapter, the very last verse of the second chapter, which is on page 136. Esha Brahmi Stiti Parta Nainam Prabhavamuyati. That is the way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. Now that's Brahman. The translation probably gives for the word Brahma Nirvana, which appears at the end of this verse. Brahma Nirvana Mrichati, the spiritual kingdom of God. So, Brahma Nirvana, as Prabhupada describes here, is the same as Brahma Bhuta, which we learned about in previous verses, and also in our morning class, I believe. So Brahma Bhuta is mentioned in the 18th chapter. Brahma Bhuta prasan atma nashochati nakangshati samak sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labade param. I'm sorry, I've given so many classes. Did we talk about that? Oh, I think we mentioned that this morning. But Brahma Bhuta, yes, Brahma Bhuta is a state attained beyond the modes of nature. That's the basic definition. Transcendental to the modes of nature. And Krishna gives the instruction how to achieve it. Yeah, we mentioned this at the end of the 14th chapter. By unflinching devotional service to me. So, what are the qualities? Well, these are some of the qualities. Experiencing the happiness within. This is equivalent to prasanatma. I think we described it, Brahma Buddha, prasanatma. Prasanna, if you look it up in the dictionary, means very clear, lucid. There's a word in English called pellucid, which means extremely clear and calm. And in that state of calmness and peace, one can actually experience one's natural blissful quality. In the Vedanta Sutra, Krishna is described as anandamayo abhyasat. This abhyasat is used to mean practice, and here it means by Krishna's activities. From what we know of his Leela, we can see that Krishna is anandamaya. Anandamaya means filled with bliss. Just like your daughter got the name Karunamayi, right? It's like a feminine form. It means full of mercy. It actually means made of mercy, practically. So Krishna is full of ananda, his natural state. Why wouldn't he be? If God can't be happy all the time, what's the use of being God? So, in other words, he's completely in control. And what would we do? Would we say, well, no, I want to experience some misery, a little, no. We want to be happy all the time. But we don't really know what constitutes actual bliss. We take sense gratification as happiness. We think some peak experience, oh, that was it. That's what. But the fact that there's a peak means that there's a come down also, isn't it? And the fact that it's temporary is itself not blissful. And that's where the shochati and kankshati comes in. Kankshati means to long for something that you don't have. And shochati means to lament for something that you've lost. And isn't that what material life is all about? I mean, think about it. Obviously everything is always changing. We know from just living in the world that we're always changing, we're growing, our mind is changing, things are happening all around us. Situations that we thought were steady and fixed, we find aren't fixed. They say one of the most traumatic things, and I can imagine, and I've been living in the place where I'm living, 2 blocks from this temple, believe it or not, for 20 years. I think that's longer than you've even been here. Is it? You've been here longer than 20 years? Okay. But I mean, at this age now, to haul all that stuff out of there, especially if I didn't know where I was going, how traumatic is that? All these poor homeless people, it's very difficult living on the street. It's such a thing, You don't know. I mean, you always hear, because inevitably you make friends with some of these people, Said, oh, I just had this stolen. You can't be secure in your stuff, We had a lady who was living in the back here. I remember her, Leah. This is years ago. You remember her? She was actually pretty together. She'd come from Texas. She had some education. I think she was a college graduate. And things just fell apart for her. I didn't find out much about her life, But she was intelligent. She would take books. She was chanting a little bit. I gave her some beads. And then Christmas came around. And Christmas can be very traumatic when you don't have the invitations and you're not away from your family and everything. She committed suicide right here on the street. I mean, it wasn't dramatic. She took an overdose of Tylenol, which is a way, it's just so difficult. And that's a metaphor, or that's an example that this is what the material world is. We have our little situations and you can feel secure, but really we're not secure. I mean, obviously we're sitting here on St. Andreas Fault, and we have a leader who is bringing everybody in the world into anxiety because he's obviously mentally not quite stable, It's crazy. That in itself is cause for anxiety. And what is it that causes anxiety? It's the sense of not being fully in control and being, and things can happen all the time. There's a wonderful verse in the 11th canto describing the origins of fear. Fear is really what material life is all about. Even these animals, They're constantly on edge. Some insect, we have this experience, especially in summertime, where these little bugs start walking around, and usually it's during japa time, and devotees are going around Tulsi or something, say, we're trying to save the bug, right? So as soon as you try to save them, they think it's a great danger, and they have their, usually, for bugs it's running away, and they try to go this way and that way and this way and that way. You can imagine what's going on in that little bug brain, now something comes to eat me, and, that's life. Prabhupada points out the birds, they come down, to try to find the worm or something, and they're always on it, looking around, little pecking. Am I okay? As soon as there's some hint, boom, they fly into the tree, right? So now in the human form of life, we'll have time for questions. We're able to plan things so we can seem to have more security. I have a house, I have a bank account, I have family. I have my tribe, my country to defend against the vicissitudes of material life. Shukadeva Goswami said, Deha patra kalatari shatma sainresha satvapi. He describes some of what he calls Prabhupada's immortal phrase, the fallible soldiers. In other words, these are shelters that we take that really ultimately must fail, beginning with the body. Deha. Prabhupada knew very, very well and said, look, everybody should take care of their health. I remember a lecture. I listen to lectures every day, Prabhupada, there's always something going on. So he's giving a lecture in New Vrindavan. Now, New Vrindavan was out in the country. And, anyone who knows, it got really cold there and stormy and there's a lot of snow, So people were getting sick. So Prabhupada's giving this lecture and you hear these coughs. And after a few people cough, Prabhupada said, why is everybody coughing? They're not keeping good health. You have to keep good health, proper diet, enough sleep, you stay warm, and all these different things. So all these are ways in which the strategy for counteracting the dangers of this world. But ultimately it fails. So the basic cause of that fear is turning away from Krishna. This Prabhupada will quote this verse all the time. Bhayam. Prabhupada's name, his given name was Abhay. Fearless. Prabhupada was he described, he's on a morning walk in Calcutta in the early 70s, and he points to this famous building, which if you go, you can't miss it. This, I forget if it's a palace for Queen Victoria or something. Because at one point, India was the crown jewel of the British Empire. And the leading city in India at that time, in the late 19th century, was Calcutta, not Bombay. Later it became Bombay because of the commercial and everything. So there's a whole memorial there. There's a whole palace there of Queen Victoria, So Prabhupada said as a child, as a young boy, 7, 8 years old, he climbed up that whole memorial, climbed up to the top of the thing, And the devotees said, oh, Prabhupada, you were so brave. And Prabhupada said, I'm still brave. Coming to the West, you don't think that took guts? A lot more brave than climbing up that little memorial. So, how did I get into that? Oh yeah, Abhay. So the name is Abhay. Now Abhay means fearless. Now when Prabhupada was initiated, he kept that. Kept that name. His spiritual master Bhakti kept, but instead of Abhay, it was Abhay Charanaravinda. Means fearless at the lotus feet of Krishna. And there's a song that has that name in it. Bhajahure mana shinandanandana abhaya charanara vindure. Prabhupada would sing that song. Hare Krishna, welcome. You know the schedule? The deities will open at 8:15. Okay, you're welcome to stay for class, whatever you like. We have seats, yeah, take seats, take cushions. Or we have, if you leave, we can get some chairs for you. Anyway, you decide. So, Abhay Charanaravinda means that at Krishna's lotus feet, we can truly have fearlessness. Because Krishna is all-powerful. And if you're at his lotus feet, you're not in a material life. You're not faced with the material body and the end of things. You're actually secure in your eternal rasa with Krishna. So we've turned away from that. And therefore this verse says, Bhayam Tritiyabhanavesha Taksyad. This is a verse by one of the 9 Yogendras, the great exalted, most exalted sons of King Rishabdev, who was an incarnation of Krishna. You'll read about it in the fifth canto. And then the 11th canto, they fly everywhere, all over the universe. And when a great king, they meet a great king or a sage, they'll stop and give instruction. So there's this great king named Nimi, and he asks them questions and they give answers in the 11th canto, chapter 2 and 3. Very, very important instructions. Take the book off the chair. It shouldn't be on the chair. You can explain her to her why when she returns. Yeah. Yeah, you can use this. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, you can sit there. Okay, would you like a book with a little stand? Is it okay? It's all right. All right. So here, this verse, what is the source of fear, and how can we overcome fear? Very important question. So first, he gives the source of fear. Bhayam is fear. Vidya benaveshitak syad. Syad in Sanskrit means comes into being. So fear is caused when we become absorbed in the material energy, which is called dvitiya, means separate from Krishna, a second thing. We're thinking there's something separate from God. We forget all about God. We turn our backs. Isha apetasya. Isha means the controller. It's a designation for God or Krishna. We turn our backs and we become absorbed in this material energy, trying to enjoy and exploit this world separately from Krishna. Rather than be servants of God, which is a natural position, we try to become competitors with God. So now we're on our own. We forgot we're not at the secure lotus feet of Krishna, who can really protect us from everything. And we're at the mercies of the material energy. But her job is to punish us. Maya's job is to chastise us, so we'll become convinced that we can't be happy here and go back to Godhead. So now you're not going to find mercy and kindness and comfort in the prison house. That's what this world is. One of the names for the material energy, Durga, isn't it? Durga Devi. Durga means prison. Durga means you can't go. Dur is difficult, let's go. It's like a fortress here. So that we're learning the lesson. And one of the lessons is, I'm frightened. Isha apetasya viparhiyo asmriti. Viparya means reversed, means everything upside down. Exemplified by Akrura's prayer. There's this great devotee named Akrura, means not cruel. But the gopis are complaining, what kind of name is that? He's so cruel, he came to Vrindavan and took Krishna away to Mathura. So it's a paradox. Anyway, but his name is Akrura, and he's known for his prayers. There's 9 different kinds of devotional service: hearing, chanting, remembering, praying, like that. And for each one of those, there's an exemplar. And the exemplar for praying is Akrura. So in his prayers to Krishna, as they're going from Vrindavan to Mathura, he has his prayers in the Yamuna. He's standing there and praying. And he says, "Oh, my Lord, I've forgotten you, and because of that, anityanatma dukkeshu viparya materiam." Notice that word viparya he uses in this verse. Those things which are temporary, my body and everything related to it, my situation, I'm taking to be eternal. I know theoretically, intellectually, obviously it's not eternal, but I'm living as if it were. This is the most amazing thing, according to Yudhishthira. Right? Everyone's dying. Every day, millions of human beings die, taken off to Yamaraj for judgment. But those who are left to think, oh, how sad. My good friend died, grandmother died. But as for me, I'm not going to die. In other words, we know intellectually, but we live as if we're going to live forever. We're not really taking it seriously. If we were, we'd chant Hare Krishna and try to stop the process of reincarnation, transmigration, which is very painful. So the result of turning our backs on Krishna and becoming absorbed in his external energy is that we lose our sense of security at his lotus feet, because we're now, as you may be reading in the 3rd canto, we're encased in this material body. We've lost our remembrance of relation to Krishna. And so we've substituted it with all of these temporary relationships with the things and people and living entities of this world. But those relationships, however important they are to us, are temporary. They're generation, there's some pleasure there's some sense of security, but ultimately they fail us. Our very relationship with this body, it has to be broken by time, by death. And that's the most anxiety-producing thing. As death approaches, for those who have no relation to Krishna, no assets in Bhakti Yoga, then everything is going to be lost. What does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? Mrityu sarvaharas chaham. As death, I take away everything. So for the atheists, they see God in the form of death, all-powerful. Can't do anything about it. Everything I worked for, everything here is being taken away. So that's where fear really comes in. So what's the antidote? Naturally, if the cause of the disease is turning away from Krishna, the cure is turning back to Krishna. So the rest of the verse describes how to overcome fear. Bhayam tutidna bhyaveshitaksat ishata viparhiyo asmati. Asmati means to forget everything. Tan mayato. By the influence of Maya, all this takes place. There's a Buddha. One has to be intelligent. Buddha abhajay tam again worships that very Lord that we turned away from. How? Bhakti aikayesham, with one-pointed, sincere, unmixed devotion. Bhakti aikayesham. And then a very important last phrase, Guru Deva Tatma. Seeing one's guru, the representative of Krishna, as one's very Lord and self. In other words, being devoted and surrendered to the guru. That's the cure for fear. And the means the main means of service described in the next couple of verses is chanting the holy name. It's right there in the 11th canto. I won't go into all the Sanskrit for you. But it's a wonderful section. We can go into it in more detail. Now back to our present verse here. Yon taksuko. So let's go into this phrase. He's describing someone. Remember how we got to this point. Let's go back to text 21:22, because it's a whole argument here. Krishna speaking. So 21, he says that those who are Brahma Yoga Yuktatma, this word Brahma comes up again and again, means that they're linked up, the soul is linked up to the Supreme Brahman, Krishna, through Bhakti Yoga. Then they don't take pleasure in the external sense gratification. Bias Barsheshu Asaktatma. They're not attached. Their soul is not attached to the touching of the senses to the sense objects. This is called sense gratification. Because Atmani Yatsukam, they're enjoying the pleasure within. That's in the verse we just read today. We have a reservoir of pleasure within us, which we've ignored. This is another part of Akrura's prayers. The verse after the one I was quoting. That my dear Lord, I'm so foolish. I'm just like a foolish animal who just visualize a scene like this. Okay, we're near the desert. This is actually a desert area. So you go a few miles to the east and you're really in a desert. So you're in this desert and there's an oasis. And you're standing at the edge of the oasis looking out in the desert. You're thirsty. Now right at your feet is a pool of water. But that pool of water is invisible to you because it's been obscured by overgrowth of vegetation. Looks to you like there's a lawn there or something, but there's actually water, but you don't see it. You look out into the desert and there's a mirage of a nice lake, okay? So you foolishly, or a foolish animal, someone who doesn't, run out into the desert to find the water, and of course when you get there's no water. That mirage disappears. So you've left the water that's right at your feet, and you've gone to something that's unreal. And that's what material life is. We within our heart, and we had this pamphlet, many of you who've been around a while, Reservoir of Pleasure. I mean, we used to distribute those by the thousands. And it's a nice, it has several elements in it. One of them is a lecture Prabhupada gave on the holy name, and the holy name as Krishna, and Krishna as the reservoir of pleasure, that we can access very easily. It's present, everyone has it. So within our hearts, Krishna's there. Krishna's always blissful. And if we reestablish that relationship with him, which is possible, we can start to experience the pleasure that Krishna is experiencing, and that because we're part and parcel of Krishna. So you remember I quoted that sutra, aphorism from the Vedanta Sutras, Anandamayo Bhyasat, which simply means that God is always full of bliss. And we're part and parcel of God, and therefore our natural state is to be full of bliss at all times. But are we? No. Because we're identifying with this body and mind, and this inevitably causes suffering. Krishna is certified, dukkha yamasastratam. This world is an abode of misery, and it's temporary.
And that temporariness is part of the misery of it. So not to get depressed, we have a solution. The only solution is to get out of it. But the wonderful thing is that by the process of bhakti, even while in this world, you can still experience that life of happiness. As Prabhupada describes in this purport, just by sitting alone, you can enjoy the life within. Now this is described in more detail in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that the great devotees, they're aware of what is called their Swarup Siddhi. Swarup means your actual form, right? Who you really are. That's not this body. This form is constantly changing. Your real Swarup is who you are in the spiritual world, which we've forgotten. We've forgotten that form. And so we've taken on all of these other forms. Even in this one body, our form is constantly changing. We were all of us once 8 years old. We all had different bodies, right? And now our body has changed completely. Even our subtle body, our mind is completely different. So who's us? It's not this body. It's the soul. But the soul, we're mysterious. We've so far away from our life in the spiritual world, we completely forgot. So Krishna consciousness is the process of remembering what we already know. So what does Lord Chaitanya say to Sanatana Goswami? Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunoi Shabanadi Shuddha Chitte Kariye Udoy. That the eternal perfection of prema, of love for God, is natural to the soul. Everyone has it. And it's not something to be artificial to be brought from outside. By the process of hearing and chanting about Krishna, etc., by the purification, it naturally awakens. Anybody, any soul can naturally awaken. I mean, any human being. You have to use your intelligence. So as that awakening takes place, what does that mean? You gradually become aware of that relationship with Krishna, and that means you have a certain form that's perfectly suited for that specific relationship you have. They fall into generally 4 different categories: as a servant, as a friend, as a parent, or as a beloved of God. And each of them is full of bliss, and they're all perfect for each of us. We have that form. So that's what bhakti is all about, is regaining that state. And then anywhere you can be happy. Hey, look at Prahlad Maharaj, an extreme example, or Haridas Thakur. You know, there are different eras. Prahlad is of ancient times, but he was a devotee even in the womb. He heard Narada Muni and he became a devotee. He was born in a demon's family. His father was the biggest demon in the universe. He had no idea his son was a devotee. But he was such a staunch devotee, he couldn't be moved. Even, just imagine, here's this delicate little 5-year-old boy, coming home from school, and his father doesn't know, anything, and he wants to know, well, what did you learn today? Just like we used to bring home, I don't know if they still do, your report cards, how you're doing in school, So instead of that, he asked him directly, what's the best thing you learned, Prahlad? And he thought he would, well, I learned about, how you can divide and conquer, and, whatever the demons learn in school, But no, he was this little tiny boy in this huge man mountain of a demon who conquered the whole universe. His very name tells you what he's about: gold and soft bedding, and as Prabhupada says, and the bed companion. In other words, sensuality. So he asked him that, and Prahlad says, Tat saramanye sudaverya dehinam sada sambodbhinna dhyama sadgrahat hit patam griyamandakupam vanam gato yadharamashayed. Father gets super angry. Not so much at Prahlad, because he thought that his teachers had taught him some stuff. He looks askance at these 2 teachers, Shanda and Amarka, and they said, we didn't teach him anything. Don't look at us. I don't know where he learned this. So he learned in the womb. How could they know? So what does that mean? What does he say to his father? Again, this idea of being always disturbed in the material side. It says, my dear father, and Prabhupada said, but he didn't really say father. He said, oh, dear best of the demons, Asurya Varya. The demons don't call themselves demons, so that was a bit of a shock anyway. So, oh father, the best thing I've learned. Sadhu has different meanings. It means the sane or sage, or it can mean the best. Tat sadhu mane. In my opinion, the best thing I learned, father, best for whom? For the conditioned soul, the embodied soul, who is sada sabudvigna dhyam, whose awareness, whose consciousness is always disturbed. Why? Because a sadgrahat. There's a verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, one line, which says, essential knowledge spoken concisely is true eloquence. We researched, where did that come from? It's a Sanskrit line. There's a whole body of sayings in Sanskrit. They're not necessarily transcendental, you know, but it's like famous sayings you'll find in Bartlett's quotations or something in English. So that's from this book. And this one line was picked out by Krishna's Kaviraj and put in his book, you know, Chaitanya Charitamrita. So our Shastra is just like that. Essential knowledge, and sometimes spoken extremely concisely. So this one phrase, asadgrahat, is so important to understand as the root of all our problems. And what it means is we're holding on to the impermanent for dear life. Here we have a perfect example. We're on the ocean, right? So imagine, I used to live, Chris has kind of played a joke on me, you know. I am averse to going into the ocean. I grew up when I was always a skinny little kid, you know, and it was always cold, so I didn't like going in the ocean. But I lived on Long Island, and our father took us to the beach every Sunday in the summer. And we'd go to the beach. So I'd play in the sand, I'd get into the ocean a little bit and come back, you know, but I didn't like to go and dive in and swim. So, so then where do I end up? 6 years, Miami Beach. On a hotel temple, literally looking out on the ocean, 50, 60 feet from the shore. I mean, a lot closer than here even. And I'd see the cruise ships come up, and I'd see the cruise ships come back on the horizon, back and forth like that. So what is this cruise ship? You know, they took the essence of the ocean liners, you know, Queen Mary. You remember from when we were kids, you know, the Queen Mary would make their way from London to New York, you know, very luxurious. Of course, the big joke was the Titanic. That was supposed to be the best one. You know what happened to that? So that's a perfect metaphor for material life. You think everything's cool. I'm enjoying. You forget you're on the ocean. I'm on this cruise ship, you know. The Titanic is built, you know, like. And it was, you know, that one of the captains, or the captain of the builder said, even God couldn't sink this ship. Yeah, temptation, right? Not too smart to say that. But that, so suppose you're taking shelter of the ship, right? The ocean's moving here and there. Now Prabhupada came in a freighter, and he was very aware of, you know, the dangers there. You know, he got sick, even almost died. But imagine that the ship springs a leak. You know, you're in the Titanic, right? So the whole problem was there weren't enough lifeboats, right? And so, but those who took shelter of the lifeboat, they were the lucky ones. But then you're still taking shelter of something not so sturdy and steady. Suppose the lifeboat itself brings a leak. This is a sadgrahat. This is a sadgrahat. We're taking shelter of the impermanent. This body is like a boat, right? And it eventually springs a leak, meaning that it gets some fatal disease. I mean, it's springing leaks all the time. But the point is that it fails. It fails, and it fails you at one point. So that's what a sadgrahat means. A sad is the impermanent. Grahat means holding on for dear life. You see how doomed that is? And ultimately it brings great anxiety. Sambuddhigna diyam, sadgrahat. So what's the solution? Again, we have the solution. Hitvatmapatam. Give up that which obstructs your spiritual life, which is keeping you bound in this illusion. And here he describes it, griyamandakupam, materialistic family life, householder life, in which you become completely illusion and you forget your real nature and your real duty, which is described as an andakupa. An andakupa is a blind well. In India, there are all kinds of wells, you probably know. You know, you dig a well, it goes dry, it gets overgrown with grass, it's dangerous. Some kid can walk by, or animal, or anyone, and fall into that well, and unless someone comes and saves you, help me, you're doomed. So if you're in it's a situation where you're practically impossible to get out of, because you're tied by so many, you know, situations, like materialistic household life. So he says, give it up, and go to the forest. What forest? Vrindavan. It's understood from the commentary. Griyamandakupam vanam gato means go to the forest. Yet, and the key, haramashriyeta, take shelter of Hari. Now this was like this whipping, you know, hitting a snake with a whip or something. Hiranyakashipu's brother had been killed by Vishnu, Hari, in the form of the boar incarnation. So that's the last thing Hiranyakashipu expected to hear from his young boy who just came back from school. You know. So he kept doing this. Later on, his father said, well, what did you learn, Prahlad? And then he said, oh, here's the best thing, best education, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Bhadasam, these 9 processes of devotional service. And his father went ballistic. And finally he says, kill him. His own son, he's like a poison tree, They couldn't hurt him. He was protected. So what did they do? They tried to crush all the ways that you could kill someone in those days. Crush them under the elephant's foot, throw him off a cliff, poison, chop him up, boil him in oil. Nothing worked. He was protected. He wasn't injured or feeling any pain because he was absolutely absorbed in Krishna, and Krishna was protecting him. So what was he experiencing? He was in bliss within. That's exactly the verse we just read today. Your antak sukha means blissful within. Antar aramas, enjoying spiritual happiness. Antar jyoti, aiming within or illumined within, enlightened, with knowledge. That yogi, that bhakti yogi, is Brahma Nirvana. Is feel absolutely no suffering and in touch with the Supreme Brahman Krishna on the Brahmabhuta platform, prasanatma, nashochati, nakangchati. No fear, no hankering, no lamentation. And Brahmabhuta adhigachati, this is the Brahmabhuta platform. So each of us has that as our legacy. We can strive for it. That should be the goal of our life. That's what Srila Prabhupada came to teach. He was uncompromising. That's what the Gaudiya Vaishnava is. Get to the radical. When I was growing up, I thought I was going to be a radical. I thought I was a radical. You ever hear the radicals of the 60s? Get to the root of the problem, the capitalist system. I was a Marxist. And, the idea was right, but I didn't know what the real root of the problem was. I thought it was socioeconomic condition. It's not, But we're actual radicals. The root of the problem is our illusion, our forgetting Krishna, our rebellion against the Lord. That's the root of all the problems in this world. And Prabhupada came to give to as a revolutionary. It's right there in the Bhagavatam at the beginning, 2nd chapter. Tad bhagvasargo janataga viplavo. Viplavo, it means to capsize. A plava is a boat. And so the words of the Bhagavatam, which is really the essence of what this movement is all about, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach the Bhagavatam. He didn't have to write a commentary of Vedanta Sutra because he felt the Bhagavatam itself was the commentary, written by the same author. And so right at the beginning, Bhagavatam is meant for this age. It was the sages at Naimisharanya or Maharaj Parikshit. He heard the Bhagavatam, and right at the beginning it says these words, even if imperfectly composed, the Bhagavatam is perfectly composed, but even if they are imperfectly composed, they are accepted by the great sages because they're glorification of Krishna, and they produce a revolution in this world's misdirected civilization. People are realizing we have to do something radical. We can't go on the same way, pouring out greenhouse gases and poisons everywhere. The world is doomed. We're all doomed. But it's just like an addict. They can't give it up. These millionaires, billionaires, masters of the universe, they're addicted to that. Their solution is to try to convince us that it's a Chinese plot or something. It's crazy. It's just like, it's like we're all in the bus together. We're all in this world. We have one world, right? But the guys driving the bus are like mad. Doesn't that bring a little anxiety to you? They're careening down the way. They don't care, just keep pouring out. The fires are burning in the Arctic. Hello? The Arctic? Yeah. It's like 90 degrees. That's the result. We're all part of this. So what's our solution? We don't think of first a solution. What is the solution to global warming? What is the solution to our personal problem? And that if we all take it up, will naturally bring the solution to all of this stuff. Because just imagine what Prabhupada is speaking here. You sit silently at any place, enjoy activities of life from within. Now, if you can do that, you see how simply you can live? This was all Prabhupada's idea. Yes, we'll have these agrarian communities, depending on land and the cows and Krishna, you know. And you live very simply, low carbon footprint, you know. But everyone will be completely blissful, experiencing the overflowing happiness from within, serving Krishna. That was the whole idea. That's the revolution that can save the world. It's not going to be some technological solution to this. That's just brought us to this mess. We actually have the actual answer is here in the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam. So here near the end of this chapter, Krishna is describing this state that can be reached by everyone by the process of becoming Krishna conscious and learning to take our pleasures in glorifying the Lord, just like we have this wonderful festival coming up, about Rath Yatra this weekend? Yeah, And it's glorifying Jagannath, chanting Hare Krishna, serving out prasadam, glorifying the Lord, and you become completely happy, And it doesn't, it's been happening for millions of years in Jagannath Puri, or tens of thousands, and it's still happening, the same program. There's no need for any, extreme, there's no drugs needed or anything like that. It's just the sound vibration of glorifying the Lord and serving Him brings happiness. We have it within. We're looking for without, and we're failing. That's the whole idea. So I've been haranguing you long enough. Any questions, comments, arguments? Oh, there's that verse I kept quoting. Yat pada pungaja balasha balasava. It's coming up on Tuesday when we continue our classes. Okay, we don't want to break our string here. We started reading also from another book called the Upadeshamrita, and we'll suspend our reading of Bhagavad Gita. We'll read text 25 on Monday. But let's continue reading verse 1 of the Upadeshamrita. Upadeshamrita means the essence of advice, essence of instruction. It's a book by Srila Rupa Goswami in 11 verses. This book is meant completely for those who are practicing devotional service. The very practical instructions we have here. And we read text 1 yesterday, but we didn't finish the purport, so we'll continue the purport. I'll just read the Sanskrit myself, and then I'll read the English translation. Vacho vegam manasakroda vegam, jihva vegam muraro pasta vegam, etan vegan yovashaheta dhira sarvam api mam pitavinsa shishya. So this is really a verse describing who we should really look for as a guide. It's describing telltale signs of a realized soul. A sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak the mind's demands and the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals, is qualified to make disciples all over the world. So continuing this purport, real atonement. Now, while Prabhupada was writing this book, he was also doing the Srimad Bhagavatam. He didn't stop the Bhagavatam. It's such a short book, And he's dealing with prayaschitta. Prayaschitta is atonement for sin. And so he's talking about the Ajamil section, 6th canto, in which there's a fellow who was a nice Brahmin, and he fell down away from that, became a thief, for his whole life, and married a prostitute and this and that. And he had his young son, he's 81 or so, and he's dying, and the Yamadutas come to pull him out of the body, and he's frightened, he's scared, and he calls his youngest son, who he had the presence of mind to name Narayan. He had many children. I think all of them were named after, So he calls out Narayan helplessly, and that one calling out immediately calls the Vishnu Dutas, and they say, "Leave him alone. He's sinless." And the Yamadutas say, "What are you talking about? We got a whole list here of all of the crimes he committed. He's a perfect candidate." But the Vishnu Dutas are more powerful. So they said, "You don't know anything about religion, So they went back to Yamaraj, and he explained the glories of even once chanting the holy name, how you become completely pure if you chant purely. So Prabhupada is writing that when he's writing this, and that's why he's bringing in this idea of atonement. Because King Parikshit, before he heard this story, Shukadeva was testing him, because he just described in the 5th canto all about the different hells. Hair-raising, if you read that chapter. The different punishments for different things. So Parikshit, being a kind Vaishnava, he's listening to the 7 days speaking Bhagavatam. He's not sleeping, not eating, not drinking, anything, just listening. He says, "Oh, how can people be saved from going to this hell?" So Sukadev tested him. He said, well, I have to atone for the sins. And so the atonements, the various means of atonement, performing austerity, sacrifices. But Pariksit said, yeah, but does that really work? Because that whatever atonement you do, it doesn't really uproot the desire to perform the sin. And so then you go back to it, and it's just like an elephant bathing. He gets all clean, and then he comes out on the shore, and how can he dry himself? Big elephant. There's no towel big enough, right? So he takes the dirt, and he puts it all on his back to get dry. But then he's dirty again. So that's what happens if you're sinning and atoning, sinning and atoning. That won't work. So Prabhupada says real atonement in this paragraph here involves coming to real knowledge, and for this there is a standard process. When one follows a regulated hygienic process, he doesn't fall sick. A human being is meant to be trained according to certain principles to revive his original knowledge. Such a methodical life is described as tapasya. One can be gradually elevated to the standard of real knowledge or Krishna consciousness by practicing austerity and celibacy, by controlling the mind, by controlling the senses, by giving up one's possessions in charity, by being avowedly truthful, by keeping clean, and by practicing yoga asanas. However, if one is fortunate enough to get the association of a pure devotee, he can easily surpass all the practices for controlling the mind by the mystic yoga process simply by following the regulative principles of Krishna consciousness, refraining from illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, and gambling, and by engaging in the service of the Supreme Lord under the direction of the bona fide spiritual master. This easy process is being recommended by Srila Rupa Goswami. Now then he goes through, and we don't know if we have much time here. Maybe we'll read one more paragraph. First, one must control his speaking power. So that's vacho vegam. Vacha is the words, the urge to speak. We know how powerful that can be, right? Every one of us has the power of speech. As soon as we get an opportunity, we begin to speak. If we do not speak about Krishna consciousness, we speak about all sorts of nonsense. A toad in a field speaks by croaking, and similarly everyone who has a tongue wants to speak, even if all he has to say is nonsense. The croaking of the toad, however, simply invites the snake, "Please come here and eat me." Nevertheless, although it is inviting death, the toad goes on croaking. The talking of the materialistic men and impersonalist Mayavadi philosophers may be compared to the croaking of frogs. They are always speaking nonsense and thus inviting death to catch them. Controlling speech, however, does not mean self-imposed silence, the external process of mauna, as Mayavadi philosophers think. Silence may appear helpful for some time, but ultimately it proves a failure. By contrast, the controlled speech advocated by Srila Rupa Goswami is the positive process of Krishna Gita, engaging the speaking process in glorifying the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. The tongue can thus glorify the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Lord. The preacher of Krishna Gita is always beyond the clutches of death. This is the significance of controlling the urge to speak. Wow, that was illuminating. Okay, we'll have to stop there. We'll pick that up on Monday. But if you don't know anything, just pick up one of these books and read out loud to someone, to your friend. You read to them, then they read to you, and you're on transcendence. You can experience Brahma Nirvana just like that. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.